All right, joining us today, friend of the channel, none other than author, educator, and journalist Mike Damante. Mike, how's it going?
It's going great, man. Thank you again for having me back. I think the last time we did this was to talk about, Hey Suburbia when it was first coming out. And we just had a good talk about punk rock and pop punk. And it just didn't seem like I was doing a podcast. It seemed like we were at a concert waiting to watch a show and we're just talking. So it was cool.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to have now an extended conversation about one band, a band that I would say is so special to both of us that someday, very, very far from now, you and I will both die, and there will be pieces of artwork on our corpses whenever we pass away. So, talking about none other than the legendary Alkaline Trio, as you can see from my background. We're doing it for a couple reasons. One, I think we're both pretty much into the band unconditionally, and it's October. So maybe AFI will get our nod next year, but for this year we're sticking with the trio boys. Um so Mike, just kind of quickly, why is it that people like you and I and people all around the world are really really into this band that quite frankly is a big band but never had like that mainstream success? Why have they resonated for now over 20 years?
I don't, that's a great question. I think a lot of bands in the scene do a really good job of kind of maintaining their fan bases through the years. And I think Alkaline Trio from the very beginning, I'm not saying they had like a cult like following, but they had a very devoted following. The first tattoo I ever got was Alkaline Trio's logo, the first one ever. And I got two more since then. I'm probably going to get a fourth eventually, so much I love this band. But I remember the first time I heard them, I was blown away because they sounded like all the pop punk that I love too, like, Blink, Newfound Glory, Ataris, but there was something darker and more poetic about them that like no other band was doing. To me, I mean, AFI was darker, but I'd never consider them a pop punk band, and Alkaline Trio too. I think, God, in my book, Hey Suburbia, when I interviewed them, from in the past, we brought up the pop punk tag, the emo tag, and they're really a band that like, if punk rock was a clique, Alkaline Trio would hang with every clique. They'd be cool with the emo crowd, the punk rock crowd, the pop punk crowd, and it's true. Like they really do hit every of those three genres. They really, their fan base is evident of that. When you go to Alkaline Trio show, you see like the little skater kids who like pop punk, you see the emo kids, and then you see like the dudes with mohawks. So like they do a really good job, I think, of making music that was highly accessible for the genre, and then some too, because they've attributed some pretty good success outside of the scene too.
People have different names for everything, and they were calling us emo for a long time, but because we have like like personal songs. I mean, we were one of our biggest influences is Jawbreaker. I think Blake is a really good writer and really makes great songs, but a really great lyricist. And I know he also writes beyond that and is really well read, and you can tell. So no matter what category anybody puts us in, it's like it's personal, um, emotive music. At least for us, um, and somewhat cathartic. So, being put into any category, it's like it's easier for people to do that. I'm um, glad to feel like we kind of stand, a little bit separate from everything. I think we've been called a lot of different things, and so I take that as a compliment. But being lumped in, we toured with Blink. We're fans of theirs. We're friends with them. And so if we're lumped in with that, that's fine. I think they're a great band, and the Descendants. I saw you have a Descendants tattoo. Like all those bands influenced all of us. So and it's pop, punk rock music, and so I don't take that any offense to that at all.
Absolutely. And I had the same thing written down here. I said they're like the punk rock chameleons because they can kind of be whatever you want them to be with inside and outside of punk rock. They're one of the few pop punk bands that when they give the line of, hey, we're actually just a rock band, they're not saying it to distance themselves from punk rock or pop punk. It's actually legitimate. I think obviously their base is in punk rock, but they go in these different directions pretty successfully, and they're a band that has they always sound like Alkaline Trio, but I don't think any of their albums sound alike. There's a different flavor, a different color to each one of them. I think, God damn it, and my shame is true. We're just they sound like two different bands, but it's clearly same group of at least two of them there the entire time. And I do think the whole kind of quasi horror punk revival or appreciation of it that we've had for about the last decade or so, with the Misfits kind of being reinstalled as the legendary figures, and Bliss Kid and all them coming in. I think Alkaline Trio needs to get some credit for that, because that wasn't a thing in the early 2000s as much. Like, that style was really passe, I think, and they were a band that really, unless you were on the emo side of things, really brought that in to the kid that was also listening to Blink and listening to the Fat bands and the Epitaph bands. They were super important in there. And then the other thing I think we always got to talk about them is lyrically, there's just nothing like them. And I talk about the Chameleon thing. They can have a song like Blue in the Face that's both about cocaine intoxication and could be a love song at the same time, and it pulls it off, and it could be seamless. And I don't know any other band that can do that. Do you have a favorite though of the two singers?
It's tough, it's so early on. It was definitely Matt, just because of, I think, where I was in my life. But I think so. I think it kind of goes in. I think earlier on, Matt was just the stronger songwriter. Dan was the better musician. I think Dan really came in his own around Good Morning. Dan's songs of Good Morning were obviously a different tone, but just the songwriting was really good. And then I would say I'm trying to think from album, I would say on Agony and Irony, my favorite songs are the Dan songs. Yeah, and then I feel like Matt kind of reclaimed the throne again on Is This Thing Cursed? I was like, oh, because I thought Dan songs on there were a lot weaker. So I think, it kind of goes back and forth. But it's crazy because this band is blessed with two amazing lyricists. You really can't say that with many bands, especially many trios. You have two guys who write lyrics that are so good, and similar too. So yeah, I think Alkaline Trio is one of those bands that is one of the best lyrically, for sure.
Yeah, and as we're recording this, they got back on the road last night. They had to take a show off. I believe Skiba's voice was giving him some trouble, and Dan finished out some of the songs. And as I'm thinking about it, I mean, I wouldn't be in love with it if I went to see Bad Religion and Alkaline Trio and I only got Dan songs, but also wouldn't hate it either. Like, they could put together a full set of just his songs, and I think they would be fine. The dance songs aren't as fun always. They're not, less irony to them at certain points. Obviously, you got like I Lied My Face Off and some of those that are just perfect dance songs. And really, I think they're at their best when they got the dueling vocals, whether it's on Crawl on the live version or even on Is This Thing Cursed, which really I think accents the strengths of both of them. In your book, again, check it out, buy it. Hey Suburbia, it's awesome. There's a PopPunk coffee table book. Yes, you could have your sophisticated friends over and talk about Screeching Weasel while you're there. They made your list of the essential albums. Shout out to the illustrator. What's the illustrator's name again?
Cassie Potish.
So there is going to be body art on people at some point. That's going to be an adaptation of this. I'm almost positive.
Awesome.
And you included Good Morning on your essential albums, and we'll read what you wrote here. Alkaline Trio showed that pop punk could be poetic, dark, and captivating. Between Dan Andriano's love songs and Matt Skiba's macabre offerings, the contrasting tones make for a classic album that is equally cohesive and engaging. And I think that's pretty much, if you wanted to say what is Alkaline Trio in a nutshell, I think that would fit. That would fit overall. Is Good Morning the peak? Is that where you're standing with it?
I mean, Private Eye and Good Morning, I go back and forth in terms of their best records. Yeah, From Here Infirmary and Good Morning, I think are their strongest. I liked them before From Here Infirmary, but I really fell in love with them with that record. And then Good Morning, I mean, it really took it to the next level in terms of, everything about that era. Like, the shows are amazing. And I mean, they were getting pretty big then. I mean, they were on late night TV, and I remember going to these shows and waiting to meet them after the shows, and they were so cool. They would come out and greet all their fans, like, there's hundreds of kids, and they were just super nice guys. And that helps too, when you meet your heroes and they're super cool. But that was just a great era because they were doing Warped tours, they were constantly touring. Is that the peak? I don't know. I feel like Crimson era too was a great time. So I feel like their golden years are probably From Here to Infirmary, in my opinion, through Crimson. just because that's when a lot of people were getting into them. They were, obviously headlining. They're doing Warped Tour. They were becoming a bigger band then as well. So yeah, it's always back and forth between Good Morning and From Here to Infirmary. I think Good Morning. It's funny because like that record really shouldn't have worked. Matt's voice was shot. His vocals sound kind of scratchy. He was depressed. All the songs are super darks, and Dan is writing love songs, and you wouldn't think they would go together, but like it really is a perfect storm. It works. It works really well. And like, at one point you're listening and it's like, man, this is dark. And then the next song's like, this is a fun summer song. So it's, Every Thug Needs a Lady is on there. And that's my wife and I, that was our wedding song to the acoustic version. And that's many people too. It's not like a unique thing. Apparently a lot of people get married to that song. And funny story about that. So when was this? 2019. Yeah, right after we got married, I took my wife to the Enema of the State 20-year anniversary shows, and we did the meet and greet before with Blink, and Matt's in Blink now. And I told Matt, I was like, "Hey Matt, we got married to Every Thug Needs a Lady," and he's like, "Oh man, that's really cool." But Mark Hoppus was like, "Matt, did you hear that?" Like Mark was more like taken aback, like more impressed by it than Matt was. And Matt probably hears it all the time, but I don't think many people get married to the Rock Show or or Family Reunion or.
I don't know. There's some stuff on the self-titled album that I'm sure people have walked down the aisle to. That's where this photo comes from, right?
Yeah,
the back
sure,
of the book.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering where that was from because I was very Enema related, but Matt made, of course, has to make his cameo. No, I think there's a lot of kids or a lot of grown men that are our age now that at some point had nose over tail on a mixtape to a young lady. I'm pretty sure that made it through several iterations. And I think
it was a clavicle.
Oh yeah. I got Goddammit like a little bit later on, so I knew more of those songs from the collections, which you're going to talk about later, because I think I heard them referenced back, and I can't find this on the internet. I've gone on the Wayback Machine. Someone named them as Blink-182 for the cool kids. And I thought that was kind of a perfect what they meant was like, oh, you're a poser, you listen to Blink, but really it was the same style band, but a little bit darker tone to it. And so the too cool for school crowd would, Alkaline Trio would be their pop punk band that they would throw out there. And I think so now that the bands have basically kind of merged into a singular unit that are dependent on each other, I think that is really funny and was such an accurate description of the band.
Yeah, there's always I always thought there was very, because they toured together, they did a few shows and tours back in the day, but I was like, you have a drummer in the band who's obviously their songwriter and the best musician in Derek and Travis. You have a front man like Matt Skiba and Tom Lund. A lot of similarities between them in terms of their style, what they're into. So I was, and then musically they're very similar. And I remember an interview with Tom DeLonge where he references that when he first heard Alkaline Trio, it made him rethink how he writes lyrics.
And it's funny too. And your interviews with them, you've interviewed them several times over the years. Yeah. You interviewed Skiba on the Warped Tour about a decade ago, and little did we know then what was to come. And he specifically references touring with them when they're younger and their interactions together. And I think they are both obviously descendants of the Descendants in many ways. And I think they both recognized that pretty clearly. That and you think about Blink, that's the other band with the two different vocalists with two different song styles, and so the similarities really are there in many ways. I think their genre bending though with Alkaline Trio is so interesting. Going back to your interview, you talk about what songs they want to cover, and Alkaline Trio's got great covers, and he talked about a Pat Benatar song covering, and they could pull that off. Their gothic horror stuff, it's so 80s in a way of and it's 80s in a way that people that listen to this music don't necessarily relate to and aren't necessarily familiar with. He talks about The Cure in so many interviews. Like that was such a big influence on them. Obviously, then you have the Elvis Costello stuff. One day I was thinking, boy, Alkaline Trio is basically what new wave would have sounded like if it didn't suck. Like that was like the best version of new wave. It's probably, especially with the electronic stuff they did later on. I think they were really innovative on that and not afraid to bring in those influences and make them work, which I think really takes some strength and some confidence in yourself as a band and your sound to not keep replicating their sound, and never hemorrhaging fans, as we talked about. They don't, there's not that one album. There's some that people like more than others, but there's not, they don't have a Saint Anger, I guess, on their resume where people were just like, nope, I'm out. We're not doing this. We're not doing this ever again. What is, if you talk about the peak, would that follow then? Is their best album, you think, Good Morning from top to bottom?
It's like from top to bottom, yeah. I think that's their best album. I think From Here to Infirmary is more of a sentimental favorite to me. So it's always, like I said, it's always back and forth between the two. But it's funny, you referenced an interview. This isn't in the book. This is in the Punk Rock UFO story I did with listing, their best songs. And I linked to an old interview I did with Matt Skiba, a video interview from Warped Tour. I mean, it's ancient. I was shooting it on a flip cam. It's really dark. But in the interview, you referenced that they always wanted to cover Love is a Battlefield by Pat Benatar, and they would have crushed it. But Derek Grant said no, because he was afraid that they were going to be the band that gets big on a cover. And it's kind of funny to me, like that they were very confident that the song was going to be so good, it was going to be this crossover pop hit. And then people would just kind of forget about him after that.
They would be the Ataris, basically. that would have been their career path. That is hilarious. And it's funny that Derek would be the one to veto that, because he would be the least associated one, visually, that you associate the least with the band in every possible way. Yeah, I gotta say, I think Crimson, like if you're showing it to just an objective music fan of like, okay, what's this band's best work? You probably would show them, not Crimson, Good Morning. You probably would show them Good Morning, as it has a lot of the different stylings of the band. I think lyrically, with the metaphors, the puns, and all those other literary devices they use, that's at the peak. But I think For Here to Infirmary, if I were to ever make a list of the best albums of that era, I think that one would end up being, just for the quality of songs, where every single one of them, you talk about no skips, and a lot of their catalog is no skips, but especially that album. It's just really, really good. And I think when you look at both of the lists we created for this, there's a lot of For Here to Infirmary on there, and that's not by accident, at all. What do you think about their live shows? Obviously they got some stuff going on now, with Matt's voice. Do you think their style and sound really translates well to the live environment?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've seen them live a zillion times. Always a great show. It's funny though, when they did Past Live, when they did all their all catalogs back to back, and for some reason, I don't know why, they recorded it and put it on DVDs and vinyl. And it's like, it doesn't sound very good, because I feel like it was something that's kind of thrown together, and it's not like a knock on them because they sound good live, but it's like, how do you expect to learn all your catalog, and then only do a handful of shows with them, and then just record them without, with that much practice? And I know a lot of their songs are structured very similarly, so they probably weren't hard to relearn. But around that time, right when they were rehearsing that, Matt just started learning all the Blink songs. So I don't know how his brain wasn't absolutely fried just from playing, hundreds and hundreds of songs. Like it just, it blows my mind. But people want to see them live on their peak. The DVD on Remains shows how good they are live, and obviously the Show Must Go Off Halloween DVD, which you have right there. I mean, I watch that every Halloween. It's so good.
Tonight's, we talked about it on Twitter before, like when's the night in October? I think tonight, because I'm in the mood talking about them today. Right. Tonight's probably going to be that, and that's where I was going to go next. I owe a lot of my fandom of a lot of bands, honestly, to DVD releases. It's kind of a lost artifact now. I guess that's what the YouTube algorithm is now, where you find stuff. One of my first exposures probably to them would be through like the Warped Tour comps and the Warped Tour DVD that they kind of co-headlined the DVD, ironically, with Bad Religion. Funny how things don't change to stay the same. But it's also this, man. My group of friends, we played this over and over and over again. So a lot of the songs, I kind of know the versions of Here at the Metro more than I know the album versions. And I've listened to the album a lot. But like to me, that was sort of the definitive Alkaline Trio set list for a while, or at least compilation of pre Good Morning stuff. You know, it's perfect. It's a presentation visually of them, you know, dressed as the priest. You got the upside down cross. Do you have the Holy Grail though? Do you have the Halloween EP on vinyl?
I knew you were getting to that. No, I do not. Yeah, I think years ago before it got, I think I saw it for sale for relatively cheap, and I probably should have jumped on it. But yeah, I mean, how cool would that be to own? I mean, I mean, what makes it even cooler is that was handed out for free at that show. So like, imagine getting that, and like, let's say if you sold it, you know, getting hundreds of dollars for it, but just the fact that they pressed it for free, I think was really cool. Really shows, you know, I mean, at the time, even though they weren't necessarily a big band, but you know, it's a good way to give back. You know, dip into some of their account. I mean, they were on Vagrant at the time, and you know, Vagrant was making a ton of money then. Vagrant was one of the biggest indie labels. So I think that was really cool that they kind of gave back in that way.
Yeah, and of course, you know where it's kind of a fake it till you make it thing, right? Where are you going to be the biggest? Well, do two shows in Chicago, and you know you're gonna own the place. And I've always thought that was cool, and it's funny because I remember as a kid thinking about that the EP, and I've also listened to the commentary on at the Metro several times. It's highly entertaining, and them talking about recording it and stuff a little bit, and that and think, oh, that'll be cool to have someday. And the whole thing of collecting physical media, even though there was more physical media back then, wasn't as big of a deal back then. And now that's one that, like you said, I feel like it was more in circulation before people realized the value of it. The value of it now, where it is we're at. So if anybody out there, anyone watching, you like the show, you're feeling super generous, you know, in the comment section, DM me. We might be able to work something out. To either one of us, follow Mike on social. If anyone needs to part with that album,
yeah, I mean, I'm willing to work a trade. I'll give you a signed copy of my book, Hey Suburbia, for it.
Equal value, Mike. It's
equal value for sure.
Okay. That is hilarious. So, other than, and then we'll go on to what we're actually here to talk about. I have a little bit of Alkaline Trio paraphernalia as the DVD. I've got From Here to Infirmary, Past Lives.
I have that one too.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I've got Maybe I'll Catch Fire over here. What are your treasured pieces of Alkaline Trio paraphernalia that you've picked up, other than the stuff that's, you know, literally on your body?
So we talked about this earlier before we went on the air. You know, I went through this phase where I felt like I was outgrowing my band merch. And I said, I have 3 Alkaline Trio tattoos. What do I need an Alkaline Trio hoodie for? And so I got rid of a lot of my stuff, which I'm really kicking myself in the butt for. But I do still have some of their vinyl. This is like a non-paraphernalia thing. It's pretty cool. Like for our anniversary, my wife got me like a printed out, it's like a lyric sheet with the sheet music for Every Dog Needs a Lady. So that's kind of cool. She got that made. But yeah, for me, it's like, it's weird. Like I'm starting to cherish more memories over things. So it's like all the photos I have with them are really, you know, because I've been to so many shows, I get to meet and interview them. And those to me mean a lot, you know, and the fact that like, they're nice dudes. Like, this is a good story. I don't know if I ever told you this story. I may have said it last time. First time I ever went to LA, I have friends who work for Epitaph. So I was able to like go tour the office, and that night, Bouncing Souls and Menzergers were playing. So my friend at Epitaph got me in for free. So me and my friend are walking up there, and I was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we see Matt Skiba there? And like, what would you be doing here? I'm like, well, he lives here. It's Bouncing Souls. Why not? And we saw Matt Skiba just like chilling outside. And I went up to him. I was like, hey, Matt. And he looked at me funny. He's like, don't you live in Houston? And I blew my mind that like he made the connection.
Wow.
That he remembered me from like interviewing him in Houston. And I was like, so cool of him. I mean, now he has no idea who I am, even though I've interviewed him, met him a zillion times. But like, and I wouldn't expect to, but that stood out. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Like, you know, he made that connection right away, because he probably was like, oh, it's this dude who's interviewed me a zillion times when we've been in Houston. But yeah, no, I cherish those things. But I mean, I still have some of the vinyl. I have From Here to Infirmary, Past Live. I have Good Morning on vinyl. I have the Alkaline Trio, which is right behind you. I have that one on vinyl, and then Damnesia. So yeah, I mean, the vinyl is still cool, and I'm trying to think what I used to have, which was really cool merch-wise. I probably got rid of. Yeah, I think that was it. I just recently just sold this too. It was the print from their tour with Newfound Glory. What's her name? Tara McPherson did it, and she's one of my favorite artists. And it's like the girl from The Shining with 2 dogs. And I got that as a gift from a friend. because I was drunk at the Alkaline Trio show and I bought something else, and he bought it for me. I hope he's not listening to this. I sold it, but hey, I have a key now. I need money, so and somebody paid like $150 for it. So that poster, because that was pretty rare.
Hey, man, Skiba and the boys are feeding your family, so that works out. That is funny. What a tour that must have been, by the way. What a just, bands that do fit together. Like most people would have those, in their CD rack, they would have, right, Sticks and Stones and From Here to Infirmary in there. But what a weird night that must have been with those two sort of contrasting styles.
And you had H2O open. That was a great tour.
Yeah, that seems awesome.
And funny, so I saw the Houston date and the Austin date. Toby Morse had to fly back, so they missed the Houston show. It was his kids, like he wanted to spend Halloween with his kids, so he flew and then came back. So they didn't play the Houston show, but they did after the show was really cool. A friend of mine owns the bar across the street. I'll get from the venue. It's called the Dirt Bar, and it's basically like the rock and roll bar of Houston. And they did a Halloween contest, and Dan Andriano was a judge. Cyrus Belushi from Newfound Glory was a judge, and I forgot who the other person was. And Matt Skiba was there too. Like they were all there just chilling, and it was a really cool, really fun time. And that's a really good memory because I was like, people dressed up too, because it was like it wasn't on Halloween, but it was like Halloween's Eve, so it was perfect to go to a show, dressed up, and then go to this costume party where Alkaline Trio and Newfound Glory were the judges.
That is weird. The one successful punk rock show that I have played in, we were dressed in all black and we got some plates to make the priest outfit. We did the whole at the Metro thing, and I think we had Private Eye radio. We might have had Take Lots with Alcohol. I'm not sure. That might have been part of our what we rolled out on there. And I just thought of that. I hadn't thought of that in a long time, but when you were saying about the memories that are not necessarily anything to do with the band, but the band being influential over you over time, that one definitely popped into my head. So let's talk about what brought the idea to do this. Is you've got a website, Punk Rock and UFOs, right? That's the name of it. And your most recent article, you have 13 essential Alkaline Trio songs. What was the impetus to do this now? Is it Halloween? You've been listening to them a lot lately. What kind of brought this on to put this out there?
Yeah, it's Halloween season, and usually around this time of year, I listen to all their discography just as a new tradition I started. I mean, I listen to them throughout the year too, but I always just start from the beginning and just listen to them all again. It's just kind of cool going down memory lane, because sometimes even like you love a band, if you don't listen to them like every month, you know what I mean? It's good to kind of fall in love with some of these songs again you haven't heard in years. So I like to do that every year. And my website recently kind of took more of a turn to do more multimedia stuff as opposed to just straight up UFO stuff. So I wanted to incorporate more music reviews and stuff like that. And this is a perfect opportunity. So I was like, you know what? Let me just do something I was going to do top 20, but I was like, man, this is hard. Top 10 would be too hard to narrow down. So kind of 13, works.
Yeah. You'd have to have that or 666 of their songs. Those are the only two options that you had. So I did not put as much effort as Mike put into his article. I have a handwritten version of if I were to make the article that Mike wrote, excluding the songs that Mike included. So we're basically going to very quickly go through 26 different Alkaline Trio songs. And yes, this is a heck of an undertaking, but it's punk rock, so we can go through this quickly. Yeah. Mine, are yours in a order of importance? Are yours like a ranking?
Yeah, mine's from 13 to 1 being the best.
Mine is chronological, and
okay.
As a result, I kind of ran out of steam with Remains because I had 13. I was like, nope, that one needs to be on there. That one needs to be on there. I will say this about Mike's article. Definitely go read it. This is not a substitute for reading it because you need the quick reference. And Mike's got all of the links at the bottom of the article to a lot of the media he's done with Alkaline Trio over the years. Mike's list is the definitive list. And I think he put a Spotify playlist in there as well. If we were a greedy record label and we had the catalog and we put out a greatest hits, it would be Mike's songs.
I appreciate that because somebody on a Facebook group said my list was trash, so I appreciate that.
Now, I don't think your list is trash, but I did find a theme on your list. You
Okay,
have
cool.
the pop punkier side of Alkaline Trio, I think, represented more on your list.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
and I mean they're a pop punk band, so that's not that big of a stretch. But I think yours is a fun list. My list, there's some fun, is a less fun list. I think I got more of the slower mid tempo side of Alkaline
Cool.
Trio in here. So let's bring. I'm gonna how we're gonna do this. I think we'll alternate. So we have a little bit and we jump around eras
Yep.
and times. First off, Mike, I gotta say I have one disagreement with you. One on your list. Your list isn't trash, but at number 13 you have Burn. That
Yeah.
is a good song. I'm not saying it. I just think it's one of these things is not like the other when you put up your list. So defend your selection, Mike.
So, I mean, Crimson is a dope album. I love Crimson. I loved it when it came out. I love what they were going for. To me, it was they're trying to recreate the Damned, the Black Album. They were incorporating gothic elements and more synth and keyboards. And at the time, Burn wasn't my favorite song. I like Time to Waste, and I Was a Prayer. I thought that was a great song too. But throughout time, really, Burn kind of represented. I feel like that album, what they were going for, and because I mean, like I said, that record, I mean, it's a really good alternative rock record. Strip away punk, goth, whatever. It's just a good rock record, and that song really kind of, I think, showcases that that ability for them to write a big radio rock song that's like not necessarily a pop song or a love song, but it's like a good rock song.
It is a good rock song, and again, I'm giving you a little bit of hell about it, but it's not the worst selection. I find it out of place. I have a negative association with Crimson that I really can't explain. Maybe I need to sit on someone's couch and explain. I think it's me personally, just the phase of life. Like that's when I was going through I'm growing out of my band merch phase, right when that came out, and Crimson was just it wasn't quite as fun as the rest of the Alkaline Trio. I'm like, all right, so they're one of those bands too. They're gonna grow up too, and the world is awful. So that's my biases coming in for Crimson. I need to revisit it to be honest, because I do. You're naming some of the songs I do like. I was really psyched when it came out because it did feel like Alkaline Trio kind of at the peak of their powers, as we were speaking, because they were both entrenched as a great pop punk band, but like you're saying, great songwriters, great band. The related media from it coming off of Good Morning really is when it started, where they were part of the club of mainstream music, even if it's a small part, but they were definitely in the club. Also, side note, you talked. I think it's on the Remains DVD where they have is it the Time to Waste video behind the scenes. I think it's
Yeah, I
there.
think so.
And most of it consists of them trying to find Skiba's in-ear monitor, which is really really fun as they're out in the field trying to find his in-ear monitor. That's just gold. Skiba's got that really unique speaking voice, where it sounds like it's a put on almost, and it's just funny to hear him and like yeah, where's my earpiece? And he still sounds like that. Like no, that's how the dude actually talks. It's kind of a Macho Man Randy Savage thing. Like no, that's his real voice. And so he does sound like that, right? Even in casual conversation, he's got that deep
Oh yeah,
voice.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
So I put, and again, mine's a little more chronological. I have Cringe as the first one to note, and that's
Okay.
another one I think is a direct result of the DVD because I love that version of it on At the Metro. I love the whole crescendo of it's the last good thing I ever saw, and that's something I noted when I was going back to their songs. They hit crescendos really, really well. Something punk rock I don't always think does as well. Punk rock can be so driving and so intense and such on there's not as much ebb and flows always in punk rock. And I think Alkaline Trio does a good job of keeping those punk rock elements and just really uh, building building towards it. I almost had Cop on there, but it's kind of such a silly song that I don't go back to it as much. And uh this San Francisco is another great song with a great crescendo, but again, I don't go back to as much. So my other piece of representation from True, God damn it, would be Trouble Breathing. I think that one too hits the crescendos with maybe you're a vampire and between a rope and a bottle. It's a very personal, very dark song. I think they perform it well, and I think that's another one. The different versions are just amazing. Are how do you feel about all the versions of the songs from God Damn It? Have they aged well? Do you like the newer recorded ones that have better production quality? Where you stand on the songs from God Damn It?
It's hard. I mean, I know that's everyone's favorite, and I think when you get older, you like it less. But the songs are still great. That doesn't, I think when you're a young jaded punk kid or emo kid and you're depressed, I mean, that's perfect. But then you kind of grow out of that, and I mean, the songs hit differently, but they're still great songs. Like for that being their first full length album, like I remember I used to. This is a funny story. First, like I went to my first girlfriend broke up with me, so I went and I got a bottle of liquor at Specs, and I drank it alone in my Alkaline Trio hoodie, listening to "God Damn It" and the Alkaline Trio, both of those records. So that's
We will talk about the it's up on your list about the specific song that you have to if your girlfriend leaves you and you're a young man in an
yeah.
Alkaline Trio hoodie to consume with alcohol. Speaking of darkness, you had Emma at number 12. Is I'm trying to think. Is this their darkest song as far as actual subject matter?
No, it just so interesting. When I used to teach, I used to be a teacher, and I would print out these lyrics and have kids actually read it and try to figure out what the song's about. And some kids are like, "Oh, it's about a girl who left a guy," or and some of them like, "Is this about suicide?" I'm like, "Got it." Um, but it's just so poetic. A poinsettia and poison rain. It's like, I mean, that could have been printed in a literature book years ago. Like that's why that song is so good. But it's so catchy too. It's so poppy. You have that bass line that starts off, and you have that Ramones punk rock riff, and it's just such a catchy song. And like I said, it's a great representation, I think, of what the band does.
Mm-hmm. A representation of Good Morning as well. I think that
Yeah.
really the tone that they were hitting there.
And
And
that's
now,
technically a Skiba song that Dan
uh,
sings on too.
yeah, he that was the. Do you remember was it the AOL session they did like in the early 2000s where they explained the details of that one?
One of the songs on the new album, a song called Emma, was inspired by an experience that Skiba had in elementary school.
It's kind of a fictitious story, I guess. It's kind of based loosely on this girl that I never knew, but kind of saw. I went to junior high school with her. And, there was something going on between her and a teacher that was a bit suspect, because she ended up kicking him in the crotch one day on the playground. This was like 5th or 6th grade. So that I remember always being like really, that was really inspiring. There was obviously something like not right going on there. And this girl kind of like exposed it or whatever in front of the whole school. And I kind of wrote this story of this girl like moving to this small town and basically like mercy killing all these people that were hiding all these dark secrets.
One that always reemerges in different formats, different acoustic sets. That one, I wouldn't say it's a fan favorite, but it's a staple in a lot of ways of their catalog. From there, we have some fun, and we go into Clavicle on your list. I love the punk rock awkwardness that they often have in their love songs, whether it's this one or Sundials or Nose Over Tail. You're talking about a lot of parts of anatomy of a partner in a song. I don't think Clavicle is the one that people generally reference when they talk about where a reference. I don't think Sir Mix-a-Lot quite has a song about a clavicle, but that's a pretty good choice.
But when you read it, like it just sounds like medical and creepy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they do a great job of like even their song titles, and the song may not even be aesthetic, they have a dark aesthetic, but with them it does. Even someone's clavicle, and it's a romantic song, but like you look at it in context with "God Damn It," which is a dark record, and it just fits, even though it's this really pop punk love song that I think I put in the post. I mean, you put this on a mixtape, next to the Atari, Saves the Day, and Blink, and it would not be out of place.
No, it wouldn't. And you brought up something that I was meant to talk about earlier. I think too, you talk about them, on Vagrant, and they're, on Epitaph now. They are a big part of, I think, the rest of the country knowing about Asian Man Records. I think they reached a little bit different audience than what Asian Man had. And obviously, Mike Park is a legend in his own right and what he put out there. And I think that's an underrated part of the Alkaline Trio legacy, is getting people to think about Asian Man and always kind of being a part of the label even after they left the label. And I think that speaks well of the band and of the people at Asian Man as well.
Yeah, the last Alkaline Trio show I went to, when they were in Austin, Texas in 2018 or 19. Mike Park was there. That's pretty cool. It wasn't in a San Francisco show or California show, and it was cool to see Mike Park just hanging out at the merch thing. So that's cool.
I also love when he gets interviewed about Alkaline Trio, the certain cognitive dissonance of his strong Christian beliefs and his promotion of Alkaline Trio. It is fun to watch. Like he always had to say when they put out God Damn It, the 6 a.m. was about waking up. It wasn't about the 3 o'clocks with the sixes. Okay. Sticking in the same era, and I had my mixtape song was actually next. I had Nose Over Tail, which again, they're ridiculous lyrics. They are absolutely ridiculous lyrics. They make them work, and I think Skiba on that song and the pace of that song, it's one of those you listen to and that you're like, that was fun, but then you have to take out the lyric sheet and like, what the heck did he say? He's cracking his head open on his kitchen sink to prove that he has brains. Like, all right, dude, you're cool. You got some stuff going on up there, man.
Yeah, I think that's what makes them so clever, because it's stuff that's like, it sounds on the basis just really obscene, but in a romantic type of song, it's not obscene, but it's still dark enough to fit with them. It's, you know.
So, Mike, your list takes a decidedly alcohol infused turn in the next couple of selections. You have, of course, which probably, I don't know, it could be on the list of what's the definitive Alkaline Trio song, or the song that most people know. I think Radio would be on that short list. It is, I don't even know if you could really call it a punk rock song the way it's composed. It's probably more, if you said, more of an alternative rock song, but it still has the Alkaline Trio beats to it. It's an amazing song. That very simple guitar intro perfectly sets the tone. Again, talk about lyrically shaking like a dog shitting razor blades. Again, who thinks of that? Who thinks of that? And then, taking your radio to bathe with you. What a perfect FU moment in a song. Go wax poetic about Radio, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people may have problems with that being number 10 on my list, because I think it's probably number 1 for a lot of people. But it's definitely one of those standout songs for Alkaline Trio that everyone knows. You know, you go to Alkaline Trio show, and everyone in the crowd, regardless of, let's say if it's someone who's, is a radio fan of the band, everyone knows that song. And it's very simplistic, and I think that's the beauty of Alkaline Trio too. A lot of their songs are very simple. And to me, it was always between Radio and 97. They're both really similar songs. They both kind of hit differently. But yeah, I think that's them. This is a great. Hey, what's Alkaline Trio like? Here's the song. This describes kind of what they're thematically what they're like.
Do you happen to know though? Because how did that song get? Was it just because it was a staple of their live sets? Like, how do so many people, even people not that familiar with the band, know that song specifically?
Matt was on Krista Makes a podcast about that song. And I think it was basically just word of mouth from being such a hit live. So when people would see them live, they would see everyone singing along. Don't quote me on that. That's what I think. I mean, it definitely stands out on Maybe I'll Catch Fire for sure. It's different than all the other songs on there. And yeah, like I said, they were a punk rock band who wasn't afraid to slow things down and do these mid-tempo songs. But then the chorus then explodes,
And I talked about the different versions, and I talked about that Warped Tour DVD that was played out, and that version on that Warped Tour DVD I really like it. They bring in Chris number 2, and I think one of the guys from Hot Water Music comes in on it to really do the ending there, and it just kind of works perfect. Also, so if there's a Stairway to Heaven of pop punk that people aren't allowed to play in a Guitar Center, I'm pretty sure Radio would be the song that would get listed there. Okay, so we are pretty in sync here, because my number 5 is 97. For a lot of the same reason. Another very simple song about a silly subject matter that Matt loves to always explain what the song is about. I just love the way it kind of seems like the song lasts longer than it is. And normally when you say that about a song, that's not a good thing. It means you're bored to death. But it's a very repetitive song that live, I think, really can they can put their own spin on it every time. I think the bare bones are there 97 with 97 for them to change it up here or there. Matt puts in different lyrics occasionally, and it's one of those things that shouldn't work, but just kind of does.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, we talked about your alcohol fame you're going on. My Friend Peter, which is probably, I think that's another one that's a sentimental favorite. It doesn't come to your mind right away. But if you ever go see Alkaline Trio live and that song starts, suddenly everybody knows the words, every single one. Let me steal from your article here. Let me read what you wrote. You said, as the band was coming up in the Chicago scene, this song mixed with alcohol and served as an ailment to many broken and mended hearts. It almost feels like a religious experience, seeing fans scream back, and then I'll drink 23 more to wipe the stupid smile off my expletive face when My Friend Peter is played live. Expand on that thought a little bit, Mike, about where the inclusion and really the atmosphere that song creates.
Yeah, I mean, just it's one of those songs like you said, it may not come to your mind right away, but when you hear that live, everyone kind of goes nuts, and especially that one part, "Stupid smile off my effing face." Everyone sings along to it. Everyone knows that part, and it's just so cool. And it's like one of those. It's a good energy, even for such a, uh, heartbreak of a song. It gives so much good energy at that part. But yeah, it's definitely one of those songs early on. Like for me, the Alkaline Trio, which is technically a compilation record, and I think it's one of their best records. Like I remember that was one of the first records I got into when I got into them. Like every song on it's good. And My Friend Peter, though, I think would be the single. If that was like a proper album, because it's so catchy too, and it's very relatable.
It is, and that's one of those songs that I wonder. I think Alkaline Trio's career is a bit out of sequence to what popular music was. It's always just slightly off. Their early career would have been better in the mid 2000s, and their mid 2000s stuff would have fit better with 90s rock in a lot of ways. And I think that's a perfect example, because we go off into these tangents with Alkaline Trio and like, oh yeah, do they belong with like the Newfound Glories of the world? Then you hear a song like My Friend Peter, and like, oh, it is perfect. If they fit perfect there, and again, they very much make it work for them. And then off that, I'll go back to your list. Take Lots with Alcohol, another great dance song, one of the funnier dance songs as well, but also gets very dark at the end. With talks about the has-been who's heckled on the stage and all that. The way Dan sings that, again, we're having a lot of fun with this song, talking about drinking too much, and then it takes that dark turn at the end, which I think is a really interesting thematic choice that really works, especially where it is on the album as well.
Yeah, I always envisioned that song like first time I heard it, and I think it's cool when you hear a song and you start picturing in your head imagery what the music video would be like. I just picture a guy going to see his therapist, and just like, oh, it's lyrically, it's so genius, uncomfortable air and so many good lines. I think that was one of the songs I think where Dan really started to stand out, especially on that record too, because I think he has less songs than Matt on that record, but that one, yeah, there's an instant catchiness to it with that drum roll, but like I said, it's still kind of at the end, it kind of when you listen to it, it's like, oh, it's it's not so happy and cheery after all.
Yeah. So we both work in education. I actually teach at the high school that I went to. And about a month ago, I was driving to work and Take Lots with Alcohol came on as I was driving. And I'm like, 15 years later, I'm still doing the same thing, hearing the same song. I'm not sad about the same things I was sad about 15 years ago, but it's one of those, and Alkaline Trio is a big one for this in general, where a song could take you back to that moment in time. And you can't even really you don't know what you were mad about or what you were feeling, but you had a feeling with it. And I think Take Lots with Alcohol, for me at least, is one that, especially that ending, that kind of comes up. I will say this before I move on to the next one. On the album, it leads into what I think is not their worst song, but the song that I just don't care for that much in Stupid Kid. I know it's one of their staples. I don't know why. I don't feel that song fits on the album. It fits the band. It is definitely a song that fits the band. I just kind of feel like probably should have been on God Damn It. What's your take on Stupid Kid?
I think it fits. It's kind of catchy. But a funny thing, I think originally it was not supposed to be on the record. I think they had, what song was it? It's On Remains. It's not Dead and Broken. It is Dead and, no, it's not Dead and Broken. I'm sorry. Oh man, this is killing me. But anyway, it was a song that was left off Major Infirmary because the label says "Stupid Kid" is going to be huge.
I mean, they weren't wrong.
The video is one of my favorite videos.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, I mean, that video is being shown on MTV too. You know,
right? The band looks great in the video. Aesthetically, it's a fun video. I just maybe it's one of those stupid resentful things we do as punk rock followers when you get mad about the normies knowing about the thing that you like. I don't have that issue with We've Had Enough. A lot of people know that song, but for some reason, Stupid Kid, like, oh, you like Alkaline Trio, you like Stupid Kid, and I'm like, all right, okay, we're good there. All right, now that was my little tangent.
From there, it was. I'm sorry, it was Dead End Road. I think was the song that was left off.
Okay, well, good choice then. I'll say that they made. So from there, I started looking into Maybe I'll Catch Fire, and tons of great songs on that one, top to bottom. I selected Sleepyhead, and that's another one I just really like the crescendo on it. When Matt starts yelling the "Hey there, sleepy smile, looks like you've lost your bedroom eyes." Not a song I can necessarily relate to, like a lot of their other songs. To be honest, I just think Matt's performance on that song is just amazing. Okay. Here's one that's very special to me that you put on there that I'm glad you included. You put on there Warbrain. Warbrain is an amazing, amazing song. Maybe it's the nostalgia factor. Maybe it's my green Rock Against Bush CD. I think that's the one that it was on that I remember. Talk about Warbrain, Mike.
So one of the points I make in some of their best songs are B-sides or songs that aren't on proper albums. Like Remains as itself, if that was an album, not a B-side album, that would be one of their best albums for sure. And I think that speaks in terms of what quality songwriters they are. They treat every song, whether it's on an EP, a compilation, they don't like, oh, it's a compilation, let's just throw the song on there. They really take time. And I mean, that guitar riff, opening up the song and, I can't go on, it's just like super catchy. And, and thematically too, it's different than what people expected, right? They're like, oh, I chose Rock Against Bush. It's going to be like this really, middle finger, political song, but it's more about somebody, the idea of losing people at war, or going off to war and potentially dying. I thought that was a genius take because it does fit with Alkaline Trio. They didn't try to be anti-Flag; they were themselves, and it fit on the compilation too.
It did. I love their B-sides. I have several of them on here. You've got them on there again. We both, I think, love Remains very much. The cassette album, like I call it over here. It's great. I don't think they ever phone it in. And I think that's, even if you can disagree with some of their selections. And as you said, but they don't really phone it in. And I wonder if it's just because they've talked about it in the past, how, they were living in different cities through a lot of their career. Matt and Dan were, and then now they're in two different bands. And I think when they do their thing, it seems like it's very down to business, and they're never looking to put something out that they wouldn't co-sign. And I think that's an important distinction there. You didn't have Jake Don Green Beers on the list, and I just thought that should also be mentioned sometime in our conversation. That we don't need to go into, but that's another great song.
That song got so many people into them. That was on the Atticus comp.
Mm-hmm. Is it?
That,
yeah. Is that the only place it's at?
That was on the first Atticus comp. No, first or second one. I think the first one was Crawl. Then the second Atticus comp was, I think, Jake Don Green Beers was on that one.
Is that really the only place that it was at? I had it on a CD exchange. That's where I always remember Jake Don Green Beers. But all right. So next on my list is Fuck You Aurora. I absolutely love Fuck You Aurora. It's a long, drawn out song. Very sad song too when you actually look up what the song was about. I don't like Aurora, Colorado. This song's about Aurora, Illinois, but I don't like Aurora, Colorado. So I just put that on them. But with the I'm sorry's and I miss yous are useless. I fucked this one up long ago. I just think that's just Alkaline Trio really doing what they do best and what they can uniquely do. All right, now let's get into some of the heavy hitters you have, and an absolute banger. I lied my face off. That is a great, great song. Again, whether it's there, whether it's here, Dan brings it on that song like no other.
Yeah, just lyrically, it's one of those songs that's dark too. Even just the title, "I lied my face off," right? But you think of it as the expression "I lied my face off." But with Alkaline Trio, you can actually imagine someone's like face melting off, right? If they're able to do like a music video of it. So like once again, they know, their audience, and they know kind of what they are. And I think that song is a great representation of it. And I think that was one of the early on, one of like the dance songs that really put Dan on the map. Like, oh wow, like now they have two legit awesome songwriters.
It did, and I think to your point too about knowing their audience, like you could create some of this stuff in a lab and it would have been perfect to who they were going for, and I don't think they did that. But again, the people who at the time of their lives are going through very petty stuff, to be honest, in the grand scheme of life, those songs very much resonate with them. But those same people like you and I, were hanging out with the people wearing the eyeliner and the white face makeup, and we're watching horror movies all the time. And I think that's such a perfect merging of those things. So I saw that you have Private Eye on your list, which is obviously, and I saw your Private Eye, and I raised you a Mr. Chainsaw because I think Mr. Chainsaw must be very difficult to perform live, just the way it sounds, the way that Skiba pulls it off. And I love a song where you want to know what the song's about, and he literally tells you at the end what the song's about, just in case you were wondering, which I thought was a great touch to Mr. Chainsaw.
I think when that song came out, I think a lot of people were comparing it to the Misfits. And I hear it absolutely, like even that opening guitar sounds like something the Misfits would do. And just like you said, I think it is one of their harder songs for them to play.
Yeah. Speaking of the Misfits, I love their cover of Halloween, the Alkaline Trio's Halloween. It doesn't sound like the Misfits version. I think the AFI version is more of a true update of the Misfits Halloween. I absolutely love Alkaline Trio's version. I wish that was more like, I wish that would have got picked up somewhere and been more widely dispersed, because that's just an amazing song with the slower arrangement that they put to such a upbeat song.
It's all piano, right? It's all on piano.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. And it, correct me if I'm wrong, does it only exist on the extras for At the Metro? And I've seen it uploaded to YouTube, but I think that's where it would have originated. So you put on another one of their, I think, staple pop punk songs in Armageddon. Amazing intro to the song. Both the guitars, the way Matt puts it all out there. Also another one bolstered, I think it was on the O2 Warp Tour compilation. Really sticks out on that one. What are your thoughts on Armageddon?
I mean, I didn't even know it was on that comp, but that to me, it's like a Warp Tour song. That's like a song you want to hear at Warp Tour. It just gets everyone going. It's catchy. You can picture people moshing to it. You can picture people, who never even heard the band, kind of moshing to it too. Like once again, like they're able to take the subject matter, and actually write these, because all these other bands are writing about the same thing. And that country is, oh well, here's a song about the end of the world, but it's not necessarily as explicit, as some other songs would be. So yeah, I think it's a fun song about darker subject matter, just kind of like what they do.
Yeah, I guess if I was Czar of the World, I would have switched out the Stupid Kid and Armageddon to be the one that everyone knows from that album. But I guess Armageddon's probably, and you mentioned this a little bit, the other one that people really do know from Here to along with Private Eye. I guess there would be those three from the album. So I got Crawl on my list next, the last song from Here to Infirmary. Another Dan theme. I think I have a pretty Dan heavy list, more so than I thought I would going into this. That's another one. I think it's a perfect album closer. It kind of sounds like almost a summary of the album, the way if you were writing an essay and your last paragraph would be a summary of what you wrote. I feel like Crawl has it. It's got the dark elements, got some of the campy elements, talking about your cure being on ice, and then kind of ends with the I don't know who your boyfriend is kind of thing, bringing in all the elements of the band in one song.
And I was going to add real quick to that. I think that was the first album where they picked a closer that was perfect. And then ever since then, they really thought about how to close the album. With every record after that, I think I think Crawl was like when they say, okay, we need to pick a really good album closer. And I think that was when they started doing that from then on, was with Crawl. Because like you said, it was a perfect way to end the album.
The nice period on the sentence there.
Yeah.
All right. So now you've talked a lot about this already. Talk about the specifics of the song, though, of Every Thug Needs a Lady, and why it's why it was good enough to be your wedding song.
I mean, it's such a great love song. The lyrics really stand out to me. Believe in what I am. It's all I have today. And we got married in Texas in the summer. So our summer wedding day. So it was just a lot of it. I think just kind of fit. But in general, like I said, that record. Dan is writing love songs and Matt's writing alcohol, drugs, and breakup songs. And Dan really came into his own in terms of I think on that record is carrying the record in terms of quality songs. Like Matt's songs, don't get me wrong, are great. All on Black is great on that record. We've Had Enough, but like the dance songs just stood out because they were so catchy and just a different shade of things. And Every Thug Needs a Lady really has creeped up into becoming a fan favorite just from was never a single. And early on, I don't think they played it on the first tour. They did off Good Morning. And then I think they started getting, I was listening to, Dan was on Krista Makes a Podcast for that song. And he said they were getting a lot of requests for it. It was one of those things where they're like, oh, okay, this is a song we wrote for the record. And yeah, we guess people liked it, but then they started hearing that people wanted to hear it. And now it's, one of their most popular songs for many reasons. Like I said, it's a lot of people's wedding song. And I think that's, when Dan, so right when the pandemic started, Dan did a ton of like Instagram, like lives, and everyone was requesting that song constantly. Like he had to play it at every one. And when Dan has done solo tours before too, that's a song he has to play at every one because acoustically it hits totally different.
You've got that. I think it's Blue Carolina, and there's one other one on Good Morning that are just like you said in the Dan range of things. They're almost a different band in those songs, but they really, really fit well. I will say the Dan songs from Good Morning, when I did see him on the Warped Tour, I think it was 04, kind of didn't work for a Warped Tour crowd. It was just like those songs need to be in a intimate club, darkened area. It doesn't really work for 2:00 in the afternoon in Las Cruces, New Mexico, when it's 120 degrees outside. With that said, though, totally agree. Also, like the whole. I think both guys have really good solo careers. Derek as well has some interesting stuff. I like how the Dan solo stuff is really a complete departure in some ways from the Alkaline Trio thing, but it's got a little bit of the same flavor. That stuff is really appealing. I think you think about songs even within the Alkaline Trio, My Standard Break from Life, or If You Had a Bad Time, and those ones really could work in a lot of different genres, and it really shows the strength, as you said, of how Dan has evolved to be such an equal member of this force. What's on here next? Oh, speaking of, as you mentioned, I have All on Black. I think that's such a cool song. It's like, I think of it as far as just, what's a badass song. I was listening to it this morning, Crucifix being your 4-leaf clover. Also cool kind of underrated fight song when you're feuding with your friends and all, when you talk about throwing looks like those around town. I think All on Black, underrated song, but very much representative of Alkaline Trio. I was gonna have the opener on there. I just thought it was a little too cliche though to keep on this list, so I kept it off.
Well, I was gonna add, like All in Black too. They wanted that to be the single, and the label was like, "No, we've had enough." And they're like, Alkaline Trio's like, "So this anti-radio song is gonna be a big radio hit?" And the label's like, "Yes." But I remember though, All in Black, because back in the day, websites were like a thing, and when you go to alkalinetrio.com, before the record came out, that's what song they played. That was like the teaser song. And then when they performed on, I think it was Letterman or Conan, they did All in Black. They didn't do We've Had Enough, probably because it's got F-bombs in the chorus. But I thought that was interesting too.
Side note, I have shot a video chronicling pop punk on Conan from like 2000 to 2005. I've been really busy, so it might come out a year from now, but that is included on there. So that's what we call a teaser in the business, folks. Okay. You stuck, actually, just coincidentally, with We've Had Enough, number 3 on your list. Another one of the staples. I think, one of their stronger sort of heavy songs, if you will, the way it goes out there. They would always, now you said that, I remember that back in the day, they would always mention the irony of that being their radio hit, which is another underrated staple of that era, whether it was No Use for a Name or the Ataris. If you were a really good band that didn't quite get all the airplay that you deserved, you had to put out a Radio Sucks kind of song that was part of the profile back then. But talk a little bit more about We've Had Enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know why it's ranked so high on my list, but it's just one of those songs I kind of go back to in terms of like first time you heard it on Good Morning, you hear that opening drum beat, you're like, man, this there's something new to this band. There's something, it's obviously Derek, right? It's just that drum beat, and then even the end, that little, it sounds like bells at the end, and that's guitar, because I remember when they did that tour, we saw it live. That's something Matt pulls off the guitar, and it's like, okay, so they're not just this 3-chord punk rock band. They can do a little bit more. And I think that was kind of, that song is a kind of was a peek into what they did on Crimson.
It had to be weird for the just the general MTV viewer when that video came on, because if you're walking around like doing the dishes, it sounds like a lot of what was being played at the time in your head. And then you see the video, and these guys are like these translucent zombies that are walking around here, which is just awesome. It's another one of those early YouTube before YouTube became so formalized, and that video was always just everywhere on whatever. There wasn't really an algorithm back in the day, but whatever version of that was, felt like if you put punk rock stuff into YouTube, that one was always flashing up in like the 08, 07 era of YouTube. All right, so next, sticking with our Good Morning theme, a song that I have tattooed on me, "Blue in the Face." This one, it's my quasi. It wasn't my wedding song, but like the tattoos when I've dedicated to my wife. It's not really that romantic if she actually read what the song is, but I thought the line at the end, "Your coffin are mine," is kind of cool. Also, a shout out to Jared Gaines. It was his flash that I adapted. He has a whole flash of Good Morning and a little bit from each song. I like how bad Matt's voice sounds on the song. I think that's part of what makes the song, especially when you consider the subject matter that's there. I believe the album version has the whole band in it, but generally it's performed just him acoustically, right?
Yeah, and I think the demo version is a full band. It's not acoustic. It's actually pretty cool, the full band version of that song too. But I mean, as an album closer, like you said, for the thematically, it's just perfect being an acoustic song, especially the way Matt's voice, how strained it is on it. It works.
Mm. I think it also works too with the strained voice of like, okay, we've been through this whole experience, and what a good way to close. Like, you kind of have nothing left, and it kind of ends again with that period on the sentence. All right, so we're moving along here. We're almost done. Now, you had a hot take on your number 2 on Old School Reasons. Go ahead, Skip Bayless. Defend your take there on Old School Reasons.
I mean, I describe it in my article. It's the perfect punk rock song. I mean, it's riffy. It's catchy. It's got Matt and Dan singing on it. Especially and that's some of my favorite songs when both of them sing on it. And this is a song where they sing just very passionately on it, and it's just perfect. Matt does the verses, and then Dan kills the choruses. Like, the lyrics are great. It's, once again, this is another song that's very obscure. It's on it's called Oil, was the name of the compilation. And now you can find it on Remains, but it's just so good. It's like, man, this is one of their best songs. You're just kind of on this comp, and that says like how good of songwriters they are. And they probably didn't even think it was, oh, let's just play this 3-chord punk rock song. Sounds like the Ramones, but no, man, it's to me, it's like the perfect punk rock song. And I know it sounds like it is a hot take to put it at number 2, but I think it's great. I think it's lyrically it's strong. It's just, it's everything I like about that band.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a DIY lobotomy. I mean, you got the punk rock and the horror methods in one 2-word sentence there. I'll close out my list with the last 2, and then we'll go to your number 1. So I have another sort of obscure, I guess this is where I got into Remains before I ran out of steam at number 13, but I was happy to have this on Remains because it's another staple of At the Metro. I have Hell Yes. I think Hell Yes is an awesome song. Another song that can be whatever you want it to be lyrically. It's got a lot of different meanings, and that reminds me of something in Old School Reasons does as well. Kids, back in the day, if you liked a song, you couldn't just go and like find it anywhere. You had to do work to get a song. So sometimes the version you had on a DVD was the version. Sometimes you went on songmeanings.com and just looked at lyrics for songs you had never heard. Hell Yes and Old School Reasons were both songs that I did that with quite frequently, and reading everybody debating about their meanings in the forums. Those are still active. Go check them out. They're kind of a funny deep dive to do. Yeah, I think Hell Yes is when you bring in that again, that kind of dark satanic element to a pretty fun and peppy song. That's something I think very Misfits-esque in the way that, like, if you never heard the Misfits lyrics, again, you would think that they're, just a Ramones ripoff in that kind of way. A lot of the upbeat stuff. Same thing actually with the Ramones, to be honest with you, if you really wanted to get technical with it. I think Hell Yes, they gave up on you a long time ago. Can't See You Blame Me. The way they put it on At the Metro too, kind of a perfect opener in a lot of ways. And one that I think is one of those it's a fan favorite, maybe even more so than a band favorite at this point, because it doesn't get rolled out as often as I think the fan base maybe would like. Again, when you've been a band for that long, you have that many songs that you have to fit in your set. It does get difficult. And the last one I have on here is I have While You're Waiting. Another one, like I said, my list was a little more. I don't like the slower version of Alkaline Trio, but yeah, I tended to gravitate towards that on this list. Another one reaches the crescendo very, very well. Very personal, very intimate sounding songs, and I think that's something they do so well for a band that can have a song like My Friend Peter, and then they got songs like While You're Waiting, and they fit next to each other so well, and they make them work. And I think what we've got into a lot is there's a certain genuine. They're genuine in the way that they like. You can feel Matt's pain in the recording of that song, and I think they're great communicators. I'll be the poor communicator saying my sentence here. They are great communicators.
I'm not joking when I tell you I miss you all the time. I already miss you all the time.
And you're number one. We need the drum roll here. Not much of a shock. If Old School Reasons was a hot take, this one is not. Private Eye at number one. What a song. What a riff to just kick everything off and just put the energy right over there. Lyrically, so many puns, so many. It's one you have to Google to follow along because it's kind of hard to listen when you hear it, but I just think an absolute great song. Defend your number one pick, Mike.
Well, it's funny because everyone at that time was writing about the same thing, right? And they opened this record with a song literally about a private eye. So Matt's thinking, hey, what would it like to be a private eye? And he writes a song. And it's just like the image is genius. Like I could picture this private eye lives in this shithole apartment, right? Not, New Year's Eve was boring as heaven. He's watching on TV, he's watching these flies fuck, and there's rotten milk in the sink. You can just picture this guy's life. And I think it's just genius songwriting. And it's just catchy. Like the riff is great, at the right place, at the right time. That chorus is perfect. And I remember the first time I heard that, I was blown away. Because it's like, man, no other band is doing songs like this, where it's pop punk, and it's punk, and it's emo, but it's like, it's dark and it's catchy. And I said, like when I first heard that, I was like, man, they're on another level than all these other bands, the Blinks and the Sum 41s, but at the same time though, they're not. It would make sense if they were on a bill with them too. You know what I mean? Like they're not at a place with them. They're just on a different level at that time than so many of these other bands. And I think that song represents that man, these guys are doing something that no one else is doing.
Another nice piece of teenage angst in that song, I think, on that New Year's line too, as well, because when you are at that, 15 to about 18-year-old range, New Year's Eve seems like an awesome thing that you're not quite able to participate in yet. You get to your 30s like us, and you're like, you don't want to participate in New Year's Eve anymore. It's an overrated holiday. But whenever you're 15, you think everyone in the world is having a lot more fun than you are on New Year's Eve. And I always love that. Again, the line about the flies. Good song when people cover it too. I think there's a lot of different versions. You've seen different bands over the years roll out. And who was it? Who was the modern pop punk band that had the version of it recently? Did you catch that? I think it was like 2018. I say recently, but
well, I don't know if they recorded, but when Blink was on tour with Day to Remember, they covered it, and Skiba came out and played it with them. Right, I'm not a big Day to Remember fan, but like their cover was pretty good. And the fact that they had Skiba come out and play with them, like look it up. The live video is good. It's like, man, this song goes hard.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. I think Alternative Press, every couple of months when they need someone to click on an article, they'll put the video of that on their website. So that kind of brings us to the end here. That's 26 songs, and we actually referenced several more. And like as I'm going through it, I can think of other ones. It's like, I left off Goodbye Forever, really, and I love when you make a list that's limited, that is what's going to happen. Before we sign off, we need to talk a little bit later period Alkaline Trio, because we both didn't include much of them on there. What are your thoughts in general of, I guess I'd say, post Crimson Alkaline Trio?
Well, it's weird because if I had a number 14, it would have been fine. That would have been my number 14 on the list from This Addiction. And I was going back and listening, obviously to their newer stuff. And to me, I mean, their last record, Resistant Curse, is great. It's funny because it came out of nowhere. Like no one knew they were doing this record. Matt was with Blink, and they're like, "Oh, it's dropping an album," and the album's good. Like sometimes you would think, they're doing all these other things. Will he? And I think it was great because I think for me as a fan of Matt, I felt like on California with Blink, I'm like, this doesn't. I feel like I don't think he was utilized enough. And maybe I was like, ooh, maybe he's lost a step with his songwriting. That's why I was like, maybe this is just where he's at in his career. But then I heard when I heard Resistant Curse, I'm like, nope, he still got it. But yeah, I think so. Like they're doing stuff good. Like I love all their stuff. And for a while, This Addiction was probably my least favorite, and I think it still is in a way, but it's still good. No, I'm sorry, Agony and Irony is my least favorite. It's weird because that's the band that's their favorite record. They've said in interviews. But no, Alkaline Trio stuff is good. I was just listening to Resistant Curse the other day. And I was like, man, there's so many songs in there that just slap. Especially all the Matt songs are good. Goodbye Fire Island, about Fire Festival. I can't believe about Trump, about how he can't believe people support Trump. And what else was on there? It was good. Throw Me to the Lions is good. And Crystalline, it's a throwback to kind of Blue in the Face and those old acoustic songs to end it. Yeah, I think that's a great record. I think it's probably, the more I listen to it, I'm like, man, I feel like if this album came out, maybe in the band's heyday, it'd probably be more of a fan favorite, I think, amongst people.
Yeah, I think Is This Thing Cursed really, not only would it have been so well received in that era, is it sounds like that era more so than they had sounded like in a long time. I don't think My Shame Is True is a bad album. I just don't like it, and I don't know why that is. I think there's really good songwriting on that album. I think it's just a different pace. So it's not as fun to go back to, and that's another one too that I kind of associate with that Past Lives era. And that one of all of them, I think you're a little harsher on Past Lives than I am, to be honest. I enjoy watching it. I think My Shame Is True really translated poorly to that environment. I will say I do think their hits in their later period are the stronger songs, whereas I think earlier on the hits were good, but they were all kind of on the level. I don't know if they're being better about selecting which ones they really get in circulation, or that's just because I think again, Agony and Irony's got its issues, but Calling All Skeletons is another song that would fit in any era. The song This Addiction fits in any era. So I think that's probably kind of strategic on their part to know that they're going to get the guys like you and I and put those songs out there. Also, thank you, Matt and Dan, for creating the meme that'll last forever on an album after you've been out 30 years, where there's nothing with 3 6s that we can't put in, say, is this cursed on everything. Shout out to the Alkaline Trio fan group on Facebook, which pretty much only exists for people to find 6s and ask if this thing is cursed.
That's funny.
Okay, so we're going to about wrap it up there. But before we do that, Mike, we talked earlier about it. You've got the book, Hey Suburbia, great book, coffee table book. Never will go out of style. It's a nice time capsule of an era. You've also got your cryptozoology and your UFO stuff. You've got your website, which is changing and evolving, as you said. Kind of, this is your time. Promote your stuff. Sell yourself, Mike.
Yeah, just so after I used to work at the Houston Chronicle. That's where a lot of these interviews at Alkaline Trio came from. After I left there, I still did a blog for them, and they recently canceled the blog. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep doing what I was doing for them on my own site, Punk Rock and UFOs. So it's gonna be more. It's more of a mass appeal site now. It's not just UFOs and weird stuff. It's music and pop culture and stuff like that too. So, and this post is, I think, a good example of that. Top 13 Alkaline Trio songs, and but yeah, just that. And Hey Suburbia, I think. We talked about this last time I was on. It is really it is a time capsule, basically, about that whole era. And some of the best times of our lives were that era, and I'm just, every time I kind of go through, I get nostalgic when I'm reading these interviews I do with like Matt and Dan in the early 2000s. And reading those quotes bring back specific memories. Oh yeah, I remember that was this tour. This was, on their bus backstage, or this was over the, what I mean? So it's really cool to kind of look back and have those memories too. But and just when we do this, it's great too, because it's like it brings back those memories of like hanging out with your friends, waiting for a show, and just shooting the shit, saying, "Hey, what's your favorite song by this band?" So yeah, it's a fun time.
Absolutely. And again, I cannot underline it more. Go to the website. Even I'm not that into the UFO side of things, but what Mike does well is he's kind of the pop music of weird things. Like if you don't want to be deep in the rabbit hole, you just want to know what's going on in that world, go check out Mike's stuff. He speaks about it eloquently. He writes about it, knows his stuff, and of course, buy Hey Suburbia. It's awesome, as I said, and it's a bit of a reference book too. Again, he's got the essential albums, the songs, and then there's the narrative portion, kind of going us through where you want to be. I love it as a conversation starter because when you do have this book out, not every book that you present to the public has a dude with a skull with the backward cap on. You're like, what is that? And like, let me tell you about this, and it's a great conversation starter. Mike, we need to do this again very soon. Perhaps we'll have a pop punk and wrestling podcast to bring up something like that. But we definitely have to do this again soon. Where can people buy the book and where can people follow you on social media?
You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Damante, punkwritingufos.com. All my books are on there. You could get Hey Suburbia on Amazon.com or also on Barnes & Noble. Any of those sites work. So once again, thank you for having me. I have a blast doing your show. I'll do it anytime. It's like I said, it just feels like two friends talking about punk rock. So appreciate it.